Hello everyone and welcome back to the Confessions of a Teenage Witch podcast. My name is Ella and I am your host, and today we are having an extremely different episode. It feels really weird that you guys can't see me but you can hear me. So I was using this mic to sing, so if it doesn't sound right, does that sound better? Like turning the gain up. Oh, it's that way. I was turning it the wrong way. That's better. So, I didn't record the podcast for Friday, so we're doing it for Sunday because it just doesn't feel right to go a week without having a podcast. So, yes, anyway, let's explain the elephant in the room. You can't see me at the moment. That is because I am trying out doing audio-only podcasts, and I think it's going to stay this way for a while because this removes so much friction. Like, it takes so much more effort to set up my camera and my tripod in the right position so that you can see me in the center of the frame, make sure that it's focused, make sure that I'm looking into the camera, and then sitting there for an hour talking. But I make sure that my podcast episodes are more planned than other people make theirs. Like, I was talking to my brother about how he felt about me changing my podcast to make it more audio only, and he was like, oh no, you should still do the video, like it's really good to do video as well. But I just really don't want to have to do video only every single week because I want to see what it's like to do just audio, and this is really interesting. Because I feel like I've got a lot less pressure on me, and also because I want to put so much effort and energy into making really amazing videos that you guys can enjoy, and putting loads of effort into that, and the podcast kind of takes energy away from that. But I don't want to stop the podcast because I absolutely love having just a chill witchcraft podcast that is always there for you guys. You can always put it on when you're washing up, or you're going for a walk in nature, or you're driving around. It's just something that you can have in the background as a bit of comfort, because I love listening to podcasts, and podcasts feel so different when you just listen to them, and they're so much more addictive. Like when I'm tidying up and I'm listening to a podcast, it's so addictive just to keep listening. So yes, I'm going to be experimenting, and I'm also going to be putting B-roll over the top, so you can still watch these podcasts on YouTube, but you can kind of see some videos at the same time, so it's more interesting than just having just a black screen, because I really want to get my watch hours up so I can get monetized. Anyway, so I have a Pims. I absolutely love, because you can hear things so much better when it's just audio only. And I'm in my room and it's dark now, which is really nice, because I know that I'm going to want to record episodes when it's dark and it's going to look rubbish. So if I can just have a nice vibey time without the lights being on me, it can be really nice and interesting. So yeah, I have my little battery powered lamp next to me. I have my salt lamp on. It's really nice, and yeah, as I said, I got my little drink. So go and get a really nice drink if you're gonna just sit here and listen to the podcast. So, as promised, this week we're going to be talking about The Power of Now, which is a book that we started talking about 2 weeks ago, and it's by the author Eckhart Tolle. He is a German spiritual teacher person, and he talks a lot about, and most of his teachings are centered around the idea of presence. So really living every single moment of your life and being rooted in presence, and it's kind of like an ongoing meditation that never ends. It's kind of like you live life like you're always meditating. That's how I've kind of interpreted it, because a lot of the practices that he teaches are things that make it feel like you're using the principles of meditation in every single day life. So you have stuff like, in meditation, you look at your thoughts like you're looking at a microscope. So it's kind of like you're detached from them when you're meditating, and then you start to detach yourself from these ideas that might not be true. So he teaches that you should do this in everyday life, and you should look at your mind like it is not you and you are detached from your mind, and you should try and kind of fill your mind, or well, not fill your mind, but kind of like really focus on like the sounds that everything makes as you're like moving about. And you should focus on just like walking around and just like really taking in all the colours of things and the smells and everything, and just kind of quietening your mind. So that is a summary of the last episode that I did about this book, but I went a lot more in depth about the whole idea of the mind and his beliefs about the mind. Today we are going to be talking about the concept of past, present and future, which is something that he talks about often in this book. But as I said in the last episode, I'm going to be doing tons and tons of episodes on this book because I really believe it is very, very good and very interesting. But I also think that you should really, really see how it fits into your personal life, because everything that he says you're not going to completely agree with or resonate with. And a lot of the things that he says, he even says himself that they are things that you might understand on another level, like not an intellectual level, like you know that what he's saying is true, but it's kind of, it's not you that believes that, it's kind of like another part of you. But this book is so complicated. Like, I was baking the other day and there was a chapter that absolutely made no sense. Like, it was so hard to understand. He was talking about Jesus, he was talking about God, and it isn't a religious book. He just uses those different figures to kind of illustrate his points. It isn't a Christian text. It is, I would say it's like a spirituality neutral text. It kind of talks about different religions such as Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and like Christianity, Catholicism, like random kind of branches of different religions and stuff. But it kind of sits in this neutral place where it's kind of like for everyone, and even people who don't believe in God or anything like that, it's got these core principles that he wants to teach everyone. But what is really, really confusing is, as we talked about before, the way that this book is written, it's a lot of it is in a question and answer format. So sometimes you start to think that you understand it, and then someone asks a question and then he explains it in a way that sounds completely different to what you've just interpreted. So it's really hard to tell. Anyway, that's me cleaning up all of the stuff I feel like for all the people who haven't seen that episode. But I highly recommend you listen to that one before you listen to that. But I hate it when people tell me to listen to something before I'm listening to the one I'm already listening to. So just listen to this and then go and listen to that afterwards if you feel like it. Because yeah, it's really annoying when you've just got into something and it's like, oh, you need to watch this first. You don't need to understand this. So I want to find in here. So yeah, I forgot to say, I got this book out from the library the other day. As some of you know, I've been volunteering at the library, so I've been spending a lot of time there. So I found this book when it was almost at the end of my shift, and I was really, really glad I could get a copy of it, because, as I said before, I did order a copy of this book, but it was really, really bad quality, so I had to send it back, which was really, really disappointing. So let us find the part. So we're talking about past, present, future today, and his whole idea of this. So we're also going to have an episode about the ego. We're going to talk about the pain body. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to be talking about this whole other body that he was talking about. I can't remember what it was, but it was a really complicated one. But this book is so complex, it's going to take so many episodes. Okay, so right, let's read some. Oh yeah, this is a really, really good thing to talk about. yeah, this is a really, really good section. Okay, so this is on page 29, if you have a copy of the book as well. I highly recommend you buy a copy of the book if you want to study this, because I really, really want to get a copy of this book so I can highlight it and I can write all over it, because it is that kind of book where you want to highlight like interesting phrases. And because I've been listening to it as an audiobook, there's like certain phrases that I want and I want to remember because they're so good to hold on to and to remember. But anyway, so somebody said, so as I said, it's question and answer format, so this is read in someone else's voice. So it says, the present moment is sometimes unacceptable, unpleasant, or awful. And his response to this, because he always talks about how we can only find happiness in the present moment. It's not going to come from the past, from being nostalgic about the past and times when you were happy before. And you will never find salvation, is like his favourite word. He says you will never find salvation in the future. So if there's anything that you want right now that you think that's going to give you happiness in the future, he argues that it will not give you happiness. To get happiness, you have to be at peace and happy and conscious in the now, in this present moment, and you've got to completely surrender to the now, which is an interesting teaching. It's very abstract and kind of difficult to grasp when we know that certain times in our lives are going to be better. Like if we have a really, really stressful job, we know that if we get rid of that job, we're going to be less stressed. But you can think what he's saying is true in another way, where you will have different issues when you get rid of that job, and you also have this kind of unknowingness. If you were to get another job, it might be as stressful, even more stressful. So it's really, really difficult to tell. And also, like, if you want to quit your job to start a business, or you want to like pursue social media as some people do, then by doing that, you don't know if it's going to work out. You don't know if it's going to be successful. So that's a way of interpreting it, but it's really, really hard to know what he means sometimes. And what's interesting is a lot of people who are fans of this book, they don't completely understand it the first time through. It's kind of like a piece of classic literature. You're not going to understand all of it, which is interesting. But I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's because it's to do with spiritual enlightenment. Like, you will only understand stuff when you are enlightened. I don't know. Anyway, so he responds to this as saying, like, sometimes you don't want to be in the present moment because it's so painful, it's horrible. He says it is as it is, and this is something I talked about in the last episode, as we accept what is. And I've been talking about this in my videos a lot lately, because we have things that happen that we can't control, and we have to just accept what is. Like, if someone is being horrible to us and we have like no way of like changing the way they are because they're like our boss or something, then you either have to accept what is or change it if you can. But like, I've said before how I absolutely hate annoying noises, and I usually can't change those noises. I can't get rid of them. Like, electrical whirring sounds are like one of the worst things in the whole world for me, which is the most stupid thing ever. But because we can't change it, we have to accept what is, and it gives you so much peace knowing that you can't change something. Like, it makes you less annoyed. It's kind of like, and I was going to talk about this later as like one of my 3 favourites, even though it wasn't one of my favourites. I just wanted to talk about a movie because we talk about a movie every week. The movie Old, I finished watching yesterday, and it's kind of, so they're trying to escape this beach where everyone is aging at a really, really rapid rate, and they have no way of getting out because like there's loads of like barriers that it's not easy to get through. So it's kind of like one of those situations where you think you should just enjoy the time you got left, because if you're gonna grow old in like a single day and like live your whole lifespan, you should just kind of surrender to it and just kind of enjoy what you have. If there's completely no way out, there's no way like trying to get annoyed or trying to get upset about it. So that's a really, really interesting concept, and that kind of links to this. So because in the film, like, this isn't a spoiler, because you can tell by the kind of characters that they are that they're not going to cope very well, but like a lot of the characters, none of them except from the children in the film really really like kind of accept it, except from maybe the parents. Like everyone's trying to fight, but they're not thinking straight. So yeah, they just end up just it's like in the first Harry Potter when they're in all of those snakes or whatever it was, when they're going through all the different stuff with the Philosopher's Stone. They have to just relax, and then the snakes won't keep like tightening. I haven't watched that film in a while, but with all the snakes, they have to just relax, and then they can go through. But if they keep fighting it gets worse. It's kind of like that. So yes, I think that the whole like being present and not thinking about the future and finally later it will be better. By accepting that, we can have so much more happiness in day-to-day life, and things that would usually annoy us before, we can kind of just learn to grow from and just kind of accept. So yes, he also says, observe how the mind labels it and how this labeling process, the continuous sitting in judgment, creates pain and unhappiness. So this is something that he talks about often. He talks about how our mind judges things as good or bad. But something that's really, really interesting is... Okay, hello everyone. So I've just come back from dinner. I'm on my second Pimm's now, and it is stronger than the last one. And I can't dilute it because I've used up the lemonade. So I'm just going to have a stronger Pimm's. This episode probably won't get more unhinged because I'm drinking, because Pimm's and cider don't really have an effect on me. Maybe Pimm's might. I haven't actually had 2 Pimm's before. But the thing that I actually get like a bit more tipsy on is like a cocktail. But like having just cider, that just doesn't do anything. So yeah, cider is great. It doesn't make me feel like woozy. Because sometimes having a cocktail on an empty stomach before a meal is not great. I learnt that the hard way on holiday. I was like stumbling through an empty restaurant in the middle of the day, this beautiful restaurant that was like overlooking the sea, and I was like trying to pretend that I wasn't drunk because we were the only family in there. I thought it looked really trashy if I just got drunk off of a cocktail because we're like tourists. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna look really silly. So yeah, I was trying to be very sophisticated, walking through the restaurant, trying not to look drunk, but I was very struggling to stay upright. Oh my god, I had like a strawberry daiquiri, and it was crazy. Anyway, so we are talking about that quote that I started talking about. I'm gonna try and remember where I got up to. So yeah, we were talking about how the mind labels things, and I was going to start talking about this concept that I also saw in a thing on people talking about like reviews of the movie Old. We're going to talk about Old again, which is mad that everything links back to this film. But somebody was saying how someone said, oh, that beach is evil, and someone said the beach isn't evil because the beach is the thing that's making them age really, really quickly. Someone said the beach isn't evil because nature is neutral. It's neither good or bad. And I think that's a really, really interesting thing to think about with this whole concept of how our brain, it constantly judges things like good people, bad people, right thing to do, wrong thing to do, and it constantly sorts things into boxes because of the way that our brains are designed. And it's not always healthy, and sometimes can make us think things that are untrue or unhelpful or mean. Like, you can have a bad experience with one person, so you can label them as bad, and then that stops you from having a great friendship with them when they might have made like one mistake with something, but you might like write them off as like a bad person because our brain, it often judges stuff. But you could be missing out on like somebody who like really, really understands you, or who would be a great friend. So yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting thing to think about. And since reading that in this book, I have started seeing how often I do this whole labelling thing when I'm walking around and like I think something. I'm like, is that me labelling it? Is it really good or bad? Is it my experiences that have made me decide that, because something that's also really interesting is the whole study of like ethics and philosophy and stuff, which I absolutely loved studying in school when I was in secondary school. I really, really enjoyed it. Like, everybody that went through school, they hated, like, PER was what it was called, philosophy, ethics and religion. But I got on really well with the teachers because I really enjoyed what we talked about, because there was such interesting discussions about so many interesting things. So with the whole idea of doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing, it's all about your upbringing and what you've been conditioned to believe, what we think is good or bad. Like this whole thing in ethics, where it's like ethics are different for every person. Like, everybody's had different parents growing up, everybody has had characters that inspire them from like books and movies that have changed the way that they think, what like the right way to deal with different situations. Like, a lot of people watching this will be witches like me, and like if we need to make a decision, we will like do some kind of divination, like tarot cards, and that's kind of our way of doing things. But other people will have other ways of doing things, and it's the same with right or wrong. So if everybody has a different moral compass of what's right and wrong, then maybe that whole labelling system isn't good for us. So that's an interesting thing to think about as well. I don't really know what I think about that aside from what I've said. It's really interesting to have just these thoughts just to sit with, and just to go through life and kind of question them and test them and see if they stand the test of time, and also with the way that you live and the things that you've been brought up to believe. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about, how if we are trying to return to how nature is, where nature is neither good or bad, like natural disasters are neither good or bad, that's just nature doing its thing. So it's kind of like a neutral thing, like nature isn't evil, it's just and it's not really good either. It's not really got a moral thing to it, because it's kind of like the center of everything. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're getting extremely deep in a way that I start getting confused. I love deep conversations and talking about stuff that's like deep, but like sometimes it gets too deep that I like actually get confused. So I then move on, which you will notice happens often in this podcast. Anyway, so yes, this continuous sitting in judgment creates pain and unhappiness. And this is really, really true as well. So like when we're saying this is good or bad, we then create like this, we start getting like annoyed by stuff, as I was saying earlier, because we label something as bad when something might not actually be bad. Like with a subject that you're studying at school, you might like really, really hate it and call it bad, but this creates pain and unhappiness. But instead, if you don't label it as good or bad, and you just accept that you have to take that subject, then you can take away that friction of you hating it, and just kind of move past it and be like, I have to do it anyway, so it doesn't matter whether I like it or not. So yeah, that's another way you could interpret that. So yes, by watching the mechanics of the mind, you step out of its resistance patterns, and you can then allow the present moment to be. This gives you a taste of the state of the inner freedom from external conditions, the state of true inner peace. And this is a really interesting concept as well. He talks about inner peace, and I think this is, again, something really abstract and difficult to kind of comprehend until you experience it. But sometimes you have these moments where you start to realise this peace. But I find it difficult that these bits of like when you get peace, they're often like, they can be different situations, so sometimes it can be hard to find patterns in it. But I find often when I feel most peaceful, it's like when I'm in nature, or like I'm writing and I'm kind of like expressing myself. I find I feel peaceful in that, and when I'm around people that I really, really love. that's when I feel peaceful. But with the power of now, he talks about how we can feel peaceful all the time. So yeah, I'm still trying to understand what that means by reading this. Oh, that's really satisfying. It's my perfume. This is not going to turn into ASMR, I promise. Yeah, I'm trying to use up some of these perfumes because I got tons of them, like spray ones, not the ones I made the other day. Because, like, I just have a lot of them. I don't really wear perfume that often, but now I wear it often because I made some. But anyway, so yeah. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to talk and try not to get perfume in my mouth now. So it says when you find this and you just allow the present moment to be, then you start to see what happens. Oh no, it says then see what happens and take action if necessary or possible. So it says accept, then act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. Make it your friend and ally, not your enemy. This will miraculously transform your life. So that is kind of a summary of what we've just been talking about. Next, I'm going to find another bit where he talks about this whole idea of present, past and future. Where did he put it in this book? I think it's more earlier on in the book than here. So yeah, that was an excerpt from chapter 2. I've forgotten what chapter I am in at the moment. Yes. Okay, where have we got to here? So, anyway, so I found this section of the book, which is in chapter 1, You Are Not Your Mind, which I think is really interesting to... Gosh, just ran up the stairs. I think it's really, really interesting to add to what we were just talking about before we talk about this past, present, future thing, if I can find it in this book. Because I don't know my way around, because as I said, I listened to it, so I don't know what pages stuff is on. Anyway, let me move this around so I can actually look through a book properly. Here we go. So, in You Are Not Your Mind, this is page 19, it says, I don't want to lose my ability to analyse and discriminate. I wouldn't mind learning how to think more clearly, in a more focused way, but I don't want to lose my mind. The gift of thought is the most precious thing we have. Without it, we would just be another species of animal. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot with this book, and I think I touched on it in the other episode that we did about the power of now. So, yes, this is what he says back to this. So yeah, it's very interesting. So he says, the predominance of mind is no more than a stage in the evolution of consciousness. We need to go on to the next stage now as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, we will be destroyed by the mind, which has grown into a monster. I will talk about this in more detail later. Thinking and consciousness are not synonymous. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. Thought cannot exist without consciousness, but consciousness does not need thought. That is a bit of a tongue twister. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. So yes, he argues that consciousness as a thing is something that we don't fully experience until we become more conscious, because he says there are like non-conscious people who just walk around and they don't really know. They're not really fully experiencing their life. They're caught up in their thoughts, in their mind. So it says, thought cannot exist without consciousness. So he says that if you are really conscious, then you still will think, because if by doing all of this you completely didn't... Wait, what was he saying? Thought cannot exist. I feel like I'm in poetry at school now. Thought cannot exist without consciousness. Yes, so these thoughts come from consciousness. He just wants to make sure that you can experience this fuller consciousness so you can be more happier and understand that some of your thoughts are illusions and delusions created which make you more unhappy and cause more discomfort. So it says consciousness does not need thought. So consciousness creates thoughts, but to be fully conscious, you don't need to think about it. that's kind of, is that what he's saying? I think so. But yeah, it does feel like I'm in English literature and I'm trying to interpret like Macbeth or something. Enlightenment means rising above thought, not falling back to a level below thought, the level of an animal or a plant. In the enlightened state, you will use your thinking mind when needed, but in a much more focused and effective way than before. Yeah, that's an interesting thing he talks about as well, is this whole, like, we're using our brains for what we need to use them for, and then once we don't need to use them anymore, we can just shut them off and we can just experience and just not need to do anything. We can just sit and just relax and feel peaceful. So if you have like a couple of work tasks that day, you turn your brain on for when you have to do the work tasks, and then when you finish them, you don't think about it anymore. And by being more disciplined with this, you actually start to do what people talk about, because people say, oh, when you go home, just forget about work. But it's really hard to actually go home and forget about like school or work, because you've been doing it all day and your brain's been programmed into it. But it takes a lot of mental energy and like learning how to actually do that, especially if you've been doing it for a long time. And also if you feel like you have to constantly be judging, am I doing it right? Like with studying, you feel like you're going completely blind, because you don't know if every action that you do every day, which ones are actually going to get you the better results in the exam. And like when you see, when you do an exam, who did better and who did worse, and like the people who didn't do that much still did really well was the people who did a lot. And like the grades, they never like level out. So yeah, it's hard with like, I don't know what tangent I went on. What was the point of what I was saying? Yeah, it's to do with like the whole idea of like, I don't know what I started saying. Why is studying relevant to that? I don't know. Yeah, it's to do with like switching you can't really switch your brain off if you've been thinking about it all day. Like, I would worry about studying when I wasn't studying. I'd be thinking about chemistry when I wasn't doing chemistry. So yeah, anyway, right, so it says, but in a much more focused and effective way than before. You use it mostly for practical purposes, but you are free of the involuntary internal dialogue, and there is inner stillness. I loved it when I was on holiday and I was really trying to practice the power of now, when I could bake or I could make food and my brain was completely silent. Like, I had the odd thought, but I didn't become caught up in it, and that's the whole thing in meditation. You can have a thought, but just don't like consciously try and think more thoughts to do that thought. If you get a thought, then you just let it go. And that's the whole thing with all of these practices, that if you get a thought, then that is okay. Like, we don't try and resist the thoughts. Like, it's not about having no thoughts, it's about reducing the amount of thoughts, because we think a lot of thoughts that are just unnecessary. We worry about things that just like are completely unnecessary for us to worry about. So that's important. It says there's inner stillness when we do this. So, when you do use your mind, and particularly when a creative solution is needed, you oscillate every few minutes or so between thought and stillness, between mind and no mind. Yeah, no mind is this one of his favourite buzzwords. So he says, no mind is consciousness without thought. I love no mind. I actually entered this state the other day. I was making my pyromancy video, which is coming out soon when I feel like the time is right, because it's ready. I've filmed it. It's edited. It's ready to go. I just haven't uploaded it yet because I'm planning out my content. But yeah, I entered no mind when I was trying to do divination, which was not the best outcome. I think it is a state that you can be in. Sometimes it's good for divination because it means that only the most important thoughts. God, that was loud. Only the most important things. Come up in your mind, because or else if I didn't go into a no mind state, then I would have had loads of thoughts that weren't to do with the divination. So yeah, but anyway, I was doing the pyromancy, which is where you stare into a candle flame, and then if the candle flickers, then it kind of tells you a message. That's kind of a way to explain it. That's a lot more simplified than it's actually more complicated than that. But if you had like a thought whilst you're doing it, then that's supposed to be like a message. It depends how you do your pyromancy, but that was how I was doing it in the video. So yes, I entered this no mind by accident. Oh my gosh, we're on 10%. That is really dangerous. Yeah, I entered no mind by accident. So I absolutely had no thoughts for like a solid minute. And it is so amazing. But then when I enter no mind, I feel like I'm not experiencing the world. I'm kind of experiencing nothing. So maybe I didn't enter no mind. I don't know. It is consciousness without thought. Only in that way, it is possible to think creatively, because only in that way does thought have any real power. Thought alone, when it is no longer connected with the much vaster realm of consciousness, quickly becomes barren, insane, and destructive. The mind is essentially a survival machine, attack and defense against other minds, gathering, storing, and analysing information. This is what it is good at, but it is not at all creative. So yeah, an important thing he talks about is how you don't need to be thinking all the time to be creative. And I'm finding this a really hard thing to grasp, because I find that I think of a lot of my good ideas when I am thinking all the time about my channel. Like, that's what I've been doing since I finished my A-levels. I've just been thinking about this channel all the time, thinking about video ideas, thinking about title ideas, thumbnail ideas, and like series ideas, and like future ideas for my channel. And I found this state was really, really good, but it was really toxic because I couldn't really quiet it. It was always there. Like, I'm constantly thinking about my YouTube channel, and it's not really that productive when it's all the time, because I don't need that many content ideas. So I've still got so much more time to think about that. So yes, thought alone, when it is no longer connected. Oh no, we've read that bit already. This is like when I'm reading and I start reading a bit I've already read. Anyway, attack and defense against other minds, gathering. That's what it's good at, but it's not at all creative. That's what we read. All true artists. I'd love to know the exact number. This would be really, really interesting to actually find out. It'd be impossible to find out. But how many people who actually practice the power now are like artists? Like, how many are there? I'd love to know how many people actually fully stick to this book and really properly practice these practices. Like, it says like there's been like millions and millions of copies sold, but how many of those people actually are living consciously now? It'd be really interesting to know, because this is hard work. This really is hard work, all of these things to first get used to, and then I guess it gets easier. But in the beginning, this is like a bloody hard work book. Like, it just like unteaches you a lot of things. It teaches you a lot of things at the same time, and it's like it's heavy going, this book. I have not finished it because it is a lot. Anyway, create from a place of no mind, from inner stillness. The mind then gives form to the creative impulse or insight. Even the great scientists have reported that their creative breakthroughs came at a time of mental quietude. The surprising result of a nationwide inquiry among America's most eminent mathematicians, including Einstein, to find out their working methods, was thinking plays only subordinate part in the brief. Blah, blah. This is getting a bit confusing. I'm starting to not really concentrate about what I'm reading. Plays only a subordinate part in the brief, decisive phase of the creative act itself. Yes, it says, so I would say that the simple reason why the majority of scientists are not creative is not because they don't know how to think, but because they don't stop thinking. I think that's interesting. Wow. Yeah, something interesting he says. It wasn't through the mind, through thinking, that the miracle that is life on earth or your body was created and are being sustained. There's clearly an intelligence at work that is far greater than the mind. How can a single human cell measuring 1 out of 1,000th, 1 over 1 of 1,000th of an inch across contain instructions within its DNA that would fill 1,000 books of 600 pages each. The more we learn about the workings of the body, the more we realise just how vast is the intelligence at work within it, and how little we know. When the mind reconnects with that, it becomes a most wonderful tool. It then serves something greater than itself. We're not actually talking about what I've actually wanted to make this episode about, though, are we? And I get a bit annoyed when that doesn't happen, because I feel like someone's going to be like, but I want to know what you were going to talk about. I want to know about past, present, future. Where is that? Right, where is it? Past pain, pain body. I'm just going through to try and find it. Talking about fear, wholeness. Don't seek yourself in the mind. Ah, I found it, right. Nothing exists outside the now. No, let's read these whole couple of pages. These are really, really important to talk about. So, first we're talking about end the delusion of time. This is what this episode was supposed to be about. So, I'm really worried that my phone is going to die. It seems almost impossible to decide. Let's check that I'm not going to die. I mean, my phone died, not me, obviously. Right. End the delusion of time. It seems almost impossible to disidentify from the mind. We're all immersed in it. How do you teach a fish to fly? So, Eckhart says, here is the key. End the delusion of time. Time and mind are inseparable. Remove time from the mind and it stops, unless you choose to use it. To be identified with your mind is to be trapped in time. The compulsion to live almost exclusively through memory and anticipation. This creates endless preoccupation with past and future, and an unwillingness to honour and acknowledge the present moment and allow it to be. This is the essence of this episode. This is what I wanted to talk about. The compulsion arises because the past gives you an identity, and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form. Both are illusions. Then somebody asked him, but without a sense of time, how would we function in this world? There'll be no goals to strive toward anymore. I wouldn't even know who I am because my past makes me who I am today. I think time is something very precious, and we need to learn to use it wisely rather than to waste it. So he then said time isn't precious at all because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of the time. The now, that is precious indeed. The more you are focused on time, past and future, the more you miss the now, the most precious thing there is. I think that's really important to think about, how we work towards these goals, to live these lives that we always want to live. And this is what I'm struggling with at the moment. I really, really wanted these A-levels to be over so I could have my summer to enjoy. But now I'm on to the next thing. It's like, I want to be at university already. And it's like, I only have 1 month left. And I should really embrace this month. But it's taking a lot of mental energy to be like, right, we've got to really embrace all of this time we have. Stop thinking about university, because it will arrive. Like, time is a thing. It's not going to stop. I'm not going to be stuck in this month forever. This is what I've been working towards. I had every single day. I was working really hard. And now I've got this piece. It's like, I should be embracing it. And I'm not. So, yes. By thinking always into the future, we forget how much amazingness there is all around us all the time. And there's so many things that we miss out on, and we can see this, like all the things we miss out on, when we look into the past, when we take short journeys into the past, and we think about stuff, or we see like an old video and we notice there is something that happened in a moment that we were in that we didn't see, because our memories are our own like viewpoint of an event. It's not factual. It is based off how you experience something, but you could be in the same room as like 50 other people, and everybody could have a different experience of the exact same room because of what their likes and their dislikes and who they spoke to and how that kind of environment affects them, what's going on with their life, what they're thinking about, and like if they've eaten enough food, if they are happy that day, if it was a good weather day that they like some people like rainy days, some people like sunny days, what kind of weather it was. Like everyone experiences things differently. So when we look at the past and we look at these memories and they're not like fully factual, we miss out on all the amazing things that happened in those times. We had, like, I always see it in movies where there's like a character and they don't realise till later on in the film that someone was always there for them, watching over them, that they never noticed. So yes, if we become more conscious, we can notice these people who are looking out for us, people that we could be friends with, people that we could have appreciated more. Like people we might have thought, oh, they're a bad person, but actually they were actually doing things that we were too caught up in our own minds to notice, like how good they were. But so yeah. Anyway, right. So he then says, the more you miss the now, the most precious thing there is. Right. Why is it the most precious thing? Firstly, because it is the only thing. It's all there is. And that's something he talks about a lot, and it's really, really important. It's like everything has only ever happened in the now. Like the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. All we have is this present moment. We don't have anything else. Like right now, we can't experience the past, we can't experience the future. We only have this. So we should enjoy it and we should embrace it, because we don't know how much time we've got left. We need to like just enjoy every single moment that we have and just take everything we can from it. So yes, where are we? The eternal present is the space within which your whole life unfolds, the one factor that remains constant. Life is now. There was never a time when your life was not now, nor will there ever be. Secondly, the now is the only point that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind. It is the only point of access into the timeless and formless realm of being. Interesting. A lot of his fancy terminology there. Please let me know in the comments what that actually means. Yes. Okay, right, I'm going to use my other phone because, I'm using my fluorite as a bookmark at the moment, which is really, really cute. Anyway, so, where were we? My brother was talking to me. Where are we? Yes, so it says, so then somebody said, aren't past and future just as real, sometimes even more real, than the present? After all, the past determines who we are, as well as how we perceive and behave in the present, and our future goals determine which actions we take in the present, which I think is really, really important. So then he replied, saying, you haven't yet grasped the essence of what I am saying because you are trying to understand it mentally. The mind cannot explain this, only you can. Please just listen. And it's really funny because he says it like that on the recording. So it's like really funny the way that he's like, please just listen. Because it's really hard to understand it. But he's like, you're trying to understand all of this mentally and you need to understand it spiritually. So it's like, okay, let's try and understand it spiritually. And that's not easy for the common person to do. Anyway, he says, have you ever experienced, done, thought, or felt anything outside of the now? Do you think you ever will? Is it possible for anything to happen or be outside the now? The answer is obvious, is it not? Nothing ever happened in the past, it happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future, it will happen in the now. When you think of the past as a memory trace stored in the mind of a former what you think of as the past is a memory trace stored in the mind of a former now. When you remember the past, you reactivate a memory trace, and you do so now. The future is an imagined now, a projection of the mind. When the future comes, it comes as the now. When you think about the future, you do it now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own, just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun. So are past and future only pale reflections of the light power and reality of the eternal present. Their reality is borrowed from the now. The essence of what I'm saying here cannot be understood by the mind. The moment you grasp it, there is a shift in consciousness from mind to being, from time to presence. Suddenly, everything feels alive, radiates energy, emanates being. Interesting. So, there was a lot there. Kind of just one whole idea, but using lots of different ways to kind of explain it. So it's kind of what we've been saying. I don't think there's a whole lot that I can add to that. Other than it's sad when people are really nostalgic of the past that they don't enjoy the now. And they keep taking journeys into the past, going, the past was so much better than now, so they keep doing that, or they think, oh, the future's going to be so much better. When we should just accept what we have, because we don't know what's going to happen next. Like, we have ideas of what happens next, but we don't actually know what's going to happen. So we should just take what we have right now, in this present moment, and just enjoy it. So that's that section of the podcast done. As I said, we're going to be having loads more episodes about the power of now. It's a very, very interesting text. It's very difficult to grasp because, as I said, you are not listening. You are trying to understand it with your mind, not understand it with consciousness, which is interesting. But I definitely want a copy of this book because I know I will use it a hell of a lot. So yes, now we're moving into the next section of this podcast where I remind you with my kind reminders to look after yourself this week. So make sure, if you haven't already today, you have a nice glass of water, or if you don't have water, have like a healthy drink to look after yourself, to kind of refresh yourself, feel hydrated, because it's really, really important that we are supplying our cells with lots of water so that they can run efficiently. Because all of the biological processes of the body, so many of them, they need water to work. So make sure you have your little glass of H2O. So yes, make sure that you go on your little nature walk this week or today if you have some time today. Maybe go with family or friends if you feel like it, or go alone, whatever suits you this week, even if it's just a walk in your garden or a walk down the street. Anything to make you feel like you are connected with nature this week is enough, or even just a little chat with your houseplant. And also make sure that you have had a meal this week that makes you feel really good. You've had one of your favourite foods and it has made you really happy. So yes, that's this week's kind reminders. And I hope it was helpful for you. Anyway, so now we're moving to the next section where I talk about my 3 favourites. I don't really know what my 3 favourites are going to be this week. I haven't planned it out. Okay, first favourite. We talked about Old. I think that's going to be one of the favourites. I mean, the film wasn't really that great. I just absolutely loved the concept of it. I thought it was so interesting. And like how to solve the aging beach, and I found this really, really good video about it, like How to Beat. It's like this YouTube channel, and the guy talks about like how you beat certain like horror films and thriller films and stuff. So it's really interesting learning how the characters could have better thought on the beach, like what they could have done to have lived longer. So yes, so that's the first favourite. Second favourite, something interesting. The book The Universe by Jack Edwards. Jack Edwards is a YouTuber. He talks about books. He absolutely loves books. He did a degree in English literature at Durham University. So he is YouTube's resident librarian, and he makes videos with like book recommendations across loads of different like genres and stuff. I don't watch his channel that often, but I do love like his the odd video that comes up in my recommended, and also I really, really love his old content, like his university content, because he talks about like getting started at university and like advice for people who have never been. Because if you go to university, you've never been to university. But anyway, he gives advice to people who who don't really have many people in their life who have been, so they don't have anyone to get advice from, like if they're first generation like me. So like your parents haven't been to university and your grandparents haven't been to university and you haven't had any siblings yet go to university. It's really helpful for people like that. So it's a really, really good book. I highly recommend it if you're also going to university this year. It kind of just gives you advice of literally everything you could know about university life. So what to bring to university, also advice for like A-levels. He talks about Freshers Week and partying and drinking and like how to wash your clothes, how to cook food to stay alive, how to not end up with your washing all like being pink because you put a red sock in with all of your white washing. And just anything you could possibly want to know about what it's like to be a university student. So I highly recommend that book. It's really, really good. I read it like in a day, I kind of skim read it. So now I'm just referring to it back. But yeah, it's got a lot of his silly sense of humour jokes in it, which makes it more interesting. So yeah, very, very good book. And then I would say my other favourite of the week is my Pims. It's really, really yum. So yes, that is everything for this week's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting to have an audio only episode. And I'm so glad that I could still give you guys an episode this week, because I would have gone mad if I would have missed a week. So yes, if you have any thoughts about what we discussed today, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you made it to the end of this podcast episode, please leave some, what kind of emoji should we do this week? Something like it's like a secret club, like you'd have to know that was the emoji we chose this week. I would love to pick the bin emoji. It's like a waste paper basket emoji. It's like if you're on Apple, I don't know what it looks like on other phones and other computers and whatever, but it's like grey, the grey grid kind of bin. I think it's just such an interesting, pretty emoji for like something that's a bin. So yeah, I would love it if you guys left that emoji in the comments. I know it's really random and silly, but I thought it'd be funny to do a silly emoji this week. So it's like you guys have entered this secret bin cult because you finished this episode. Anyway, also please let me know if you like this style of podcast. How many times are we flushing the toilet? It was for so long, you can hear it on the recording so much. So yeah, that's really funny. Anyway, so yes, please let me know in the comments if you like the audio only podcast. I absolutely love it. It's so much easier and it makes me feel like I stay to the point more. Because when I film myself talking, I just end up waffling about something. But with audio only, I feel like I stick to what I'm talking about more. So yeah, I think it worked well this week. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you are watching on YouTube, please know that you can watch this episode on Apple Podcasts and also on Spotify. But I highly recommend you listen to it on YouTube so I can get my watch hours up, so I can get monetized quicker. But yeah, that is everything. That's all I have to say for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day whatever you are doing, and I will see you all next week for the next episode, or probably tomorrow, because if I'm posting this tomorrow, then that means that the tomorrow that you are going to be hearing this, there will be my new YouTube video up as well. So yes, anyway, I will see you guys all soon. Thank you for listening. Bye.